Day commemorative. Please stand quietly at the end of the official flag. Please take your seat.
We acknowledge the Gweagal people, We acknowledge the Gweagal people of the Darawal Nation and pay our respects to all elders past and present. Gweagal men, women and children have cared and raised their families on this land which we share. We will continue our knowledge, teaching and learning on these fertile grounds, and will always remember our spiritual connection to the country as we all strive for excellence at Woolooware. This land was and always will be Aboriginal land. Thank you.
Thanks, students. For our welcome to country, please welcome Ms. Benson, who will give the principal's address.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Lucas, for your acknowledgement of country. I would also like to affirm we absolutely have the privilege of working on this land every day, and that this is and always will be Aboriginal land. I would like to take a moment to also welcome our very special guests. To the Honourable Mark Speakman, our very valued member of Cronulla RSL sub-branch, Paul Zaat, and also Peter Lennan. But I'd also like to thank particularly every single person for the respect that you're showing right now. Thank you, Woolooware High School, for really understanding what this assembly is all about. Finally, I'd also like to thank a number of people who have showed great dedication and passion for this assembly and making sure that every single person in this room understands what ANZAC means for us. Thank you to Ms. Norfolk and Mr. Petrakis for really leading this. Thank you to Mrs. Petrakis and Ms. Porteous for ensuring we have musical accompaniment. There's a whole lot of tech crew up there, including Mr. Tyne. Thank you so much. But also, I wanted to call out our student leaders. They really wanted to make this day a memorable one and a really special one. They really want you to understand what ANZAC means for us. I'd like to say thank you for honouring the tradition to our student leaders, and let's really celebrate together. Let's really understand what's going on. And I just want to say our heartfelt gratitude. Thank you. Sorry, let's wait here.
Thank you, Ms. Benson. And now a message from us, the student leaders, who would like to share their personal family stories about ANZAC experience at Woolooware.
Please promise they will know about me were the words my great-grandfather Donald Dean spoke as he embarked from Australia in August 1941, leaving behind his heavily pregnant wife to serve in World War II. His journey on the front lines was brief, captured as a prisoner of war in training where he was incessantly tortured, starved, exploited for labour on the Burma Railway and prone to disease. After 2,044 days of active service, he returned to a hardly recognisable wife and daughter, relentlessly tormented by the memories which left him a shell of his former self. But my great-grandfather was not the only one.
My great-grandpa John Watt served in the Royal Australian Navy from 1943 to 1954, during which was stationed on various ships, including the HMA Squadron, Quiberon, Warramunga and Warrego. He was also part of the atomic test from 1952 to 1958, and was involved in operations in Korea and Vietnam, for which he received the United Nations Service Medal. He was also awarded the Australian Service Medal for operations in Korea, Japan and Papua New Guinea, in the Navy Long Service and Good Conduct Medal.
In 1944, my great-grandfather John Healy left his loving family at just 19, just 1 year older than me, to serve in the Engineer Combat Battalion campaigns in Rhineland and Central Europe as a demolitions expert, engineer, duty soldier and military policeman during World War II. He would later write home to his aunt and uncle on his 21st birthday after a fierce battle, where he would detail it as a night we shall never forget. He would return home just 12 days later, war-torn and shell-shocked, forced to live with the knowledge that he was one of the lucky few able to see their loved ones once more, but he was not the only one.
Many communities and families were affected by war, including my grandfather Paul Spears, who was born in Greece during World War II, and when asked about the war, he said that it was like hell. When he was 6, he and his brothers had to hide in self-made trenches while the Germans invaded, burned their village and shot innocent people. They were lucky to survive, as he remembers the soldiers being within 20 metres of their hiding place. Once the Germans left and they got out of the trench, he could see bodies lying on the ground and his house burning in the distance.
It is hard to imagine my great-grandfather, Esmond Owen Rice, as a soldier. He was a scholar, a mathematician, a Christian man who had a gentle and quiet manner. He enlisted in April 1942 and served in New Guinea for 4 years as part of the 3rd Australian Survey Battery. My grandma, who was only a few months old when he went off to war, remembers the day he came home. She recalls having to meet a man in uniform. This was the first time she met her father. She was 4 years old. After he returned, he never spoke about his experiences at war, but the trauma would return to him in his nightmares.
ANZAC Day was first established as a day of remembrance for Australians who died during the First World War. Over time, the rituals we now associate with the day, the dawn vigil, marches, memorial services, reunions, and two-up games, became firmly established as part of ANZAC Day culture. But the purpose has always remained the same, to give Australians a day to remember those who never returned. This is evoked in the words, "Lest we forget." Over time, ANZAC Day has grown to commemorate the lives of Australians who fought in the Second World War, and eventually, all military and peacekeeping operations that Australia has been involved in. And now, in 2023, as a culturally diverse nation, Australia Day has broadened to include a multicultural perspective of war. This is evident in the stories generously shared by my peers, who have given us a glimpse into their own ancestors' experiences of war. The stories cover a range of perspectives, from soldier to civilian, home and abroad, all bearing testament to the human face and global impact of war. And as they've demonstrated, the memory of war is enduring, each memory deeply personal and important. And I'd like to highlight that these were only 5 perspectives. The Australian War Memorial Roll of Honour lists the names of over 103,000 Australians who have lost their lives in war and conflict. Add to this number the soldiers who survived, and that's a lot of people, a lot of lives impacted, and a lot of personal stories to be told. And these stories live on through people like us, the younger generations, their families and loved ones. This unites us, and it is our role to ensure that these stories are heard and never forgotten. ANZAC Day is a day to remember. It's a time we mutually recognise those who served our country and pay tribute to those who lost their lives. The men and women who, when faced with battle, showed loyalty, selflessness and courage. we must never forget.
Please welcome our local Member of Parliament and new Liberal Party leader from New South Wales, the Honourable Mardi. Mr. Speakman has served our local community for over 10 years and has kindly given his time to us. Please welcome Mr. Speakman.
Well, good morning, everybody. Today I'd like to touch briefly on all of the remembrance, respect, reflection and reaffirmation. Remembrance. Of course, today, as we've heard, we remember those who paid the ultimate sacrifice to defend this country and its freedoms. Over 103,000 Australians have lost their lives in. So just think about that in context. That's the equivalent of half the population of southern China lost in war. 60,000 of those lost their lives in World War I. 156,000 wounded, gassed, or taken prisoner. And in that war, 417,000 men, and they were men then, enlisted, and that was about 40% of the men aged 18 to 44. So on my rough calculations, something like 1 in 10 males in Australia either lost their lives in World War I, or were gassed, or imprisoned, or traumatised for life. And World War I was the costliest war in terms of lives lost and casualties Australia has faced. As teenagers, think about what that war would have signified for many of your age at the time. The minimum enlistment age was 21 or 18 with parents' permission. Boys aged 14 to 17 could enlist as buglers, trumpeters and musicians, but many gave false ages in order to join up. The youngest known ANZAC was 14 years old, the same age as many of you in year 8 and 9. Private James Mark was said to be an enthusiastic schoolboy, probably keen to travel halfway around the world for adventure. He died at Gallipoli. He was one of 235 young men who lost their lives before the age of 18 in first war. Men who, boys who never went on to have families, careers, or fulfil their childhood dreams. So today, ANZAC Day is about remembrance of those who lost their lives. It's also about respect. Respect for those, but also respect for those who have served Australia in all wars, in peacekeeping operations, our veterans and our current servicemen and women. It's also about reflection. To reflect on the dreadful carnage that war brings, the hundreds of thousands of millions of lives that are lost, billions of families that are destroyed, the trauma. To reflect on why we have wars, what can we do to stop wars, what are the lessons of history that we can learn to have peace. To reflect on the sad fact that we're always going to have aggressors in the world, people who do evil things, people who kill civilians, like we've seen massacres in Ukraine, for example. But to reflect on what each and every one of you can do to make the world a safer place, a happier place, a more peaceful place. It's also to reflect on what ANZAC Day means about our national spirit. Most countries have a national day where they've fought a war and won independence, or they've won some great battle. Australia and New Zealand are one of the rare countries where we actually have a national day that commemorates a dreadful defeat, a dreadful carnage, a dreadful loss of life. What does it say about our national spirit? Hopefully it says that we're a nation of nature, of fairness, of humility, not a nation that glorifies war or trumpets success, but a nation that looks after our mates and looks after each and every one of us. So that's reflection. Reaffirmation. We remember the fallen. We respect those who have served in all theatres of war and peacekeeping operations for Australia. We reflect on what war means, but we reaffirm our commitment to the wonderful democracy we have in Australia, all the freedoms, prosperity that we enjoy. as a last resort to defend this country, but in the meantime to do everything we can to have a peaceful and happy world. Let's work together.
Thank you, Mr. Speakman, for your valuable words. We will now hear from Year 8 student Sienna Pratt, who will recite the Global Oak 1 poem Enders by John McRae. The poem was written as a memorial to those that fell on the Western Front from McRae's own personal experiences.
In Flanders fields, the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that marked our place, and in the sky, the larks still bravely singing, quiet, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead, short days ago, when you felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved them and loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the float, with hope. To you, from failing hands we throw, the torch be yours to hold it high, if you break faith with us who die. We shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
Thank you, Sienna, for your contribution today. As an interlude, we will hear from our Year 10 music ensemble, who performed 1,000 Years by Christina Perry. During this musical item, Lower High School's memorial honor roll of past and current servicemen and women will be screened. We would like to take this moment to thank you and your families for helping to add to our school's story. picture of our community's remembrance of past and present servicemen and women. Today we are pleased to welcome RSL member and Vietnam War veteran Paul Zaat to the microphone to speak to you about his personal thoughts on ANZAC Day.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the principal and the staff and you, the students, for the invitation here today to your ANZAC Day service. And as Mark mentioned earlier, ANZAC Day is a day of remembrance, a day of faith tribute to all those who have fought, those who have suffered, and those who have faced reproductive loss. My role as a veteran is I was in the Vietnam War for 12 months in November 1969 and November 1970. And at that time was the height of the war. We actually had three battalions, approximately 1,000 men, in operational duty. One of those battalions, I'm proud to say, was an ANZAC battalion. So I can say I haven't fought with the ANZAC. It was the ripe age of 20 at the time. It's amazing, you know, when you're 20 years of age, and many of you are very far from that, you can't believe that the decisions one has to make, split-second decisions which mean the difference between life and death. And, you know, they say kids grow up fast. Well, I can tell you now, you certainly grow up fast if you're in the environment of a war. Because I don't believe we're built for human beings to go to war. We're definitely not built to be killing and wounding and dying human beings. But unfortunately, that's what happens when we do go to war. The 12 months I was there, unfortunately I lost 18 mates killed. The war was at its height, and we worked with American forces, South Korean forces, and we also had, in my battalion, we actually had some British forces. It was a tough 12 months, as war is for everybody, not only just for myself. But during that time, to help me get over the toughness of the war and the mental strain one has, just as I say, at that age. And you've got to remember, we had, I was a regular soldier, so I'd already been in the army for 3 years. A lot of the guys I was serving was the national service conscripts. You wouldn't know that, but because of the war was escalating and we needed to increase our numbers on the battlefield, the government had reintroduced national service. So at the age of 20, people's birthdays were drawn out of a hat or out of a barrel, and if your number came up or your birthday came up, you got conscripted. So I worked with many wonderful national servicemen. These are guys that have come straight out of their business, out of their job, haven't been working that long, maybe 2 years maximum, get drafted into a war, and then on the completion of the war, or their 2 years service, to then sent back to their job. I remember one instance, I was in an operation and I had a young guy with me, he was my age, we were both just over 20. And we got in a bit of strife and he said to me, he thought it might be the end of the world for all of us, and he actually said to me, I can't believe that 8 months ago I was writing out insurance claims for the NRMA, and here I am now in a situation like this. And I remember saying to him, look, Dave, don't worry about that, we'll get over this, we'll get over the next couple of weeks, and I can guarantee you'll be back at your job in 12 months' time writing insurance claims for me. And I'm very pleased to say that was the case. During my 12 months, I actually started writing poetry during some of the quiet time. I found it really helped. It's what I call living in the present, and not the past, which I found out is a great way to live, especially that's what my psychiatrist has told me for the last 20 years, so I've actually taken note. And one of the poems I wrote, I read out on ANZAC Day. I wrote a number of poems. Some of them nearly took 3 to 4 weeks to complete. The particular poem that I read out on ANZAC Day, I actually took over 12 months to write because I was just taking notes. I never wrote for the next 50 years, or 52 years when I got home. But last year I was inspired, like you as students are often inspired. It was not by the mate that you're working with on an assignment, it might be the teacher that you're with. But even at the ripe old age of 73, I was inspired. I was inspired by the president of our sub-branch, Corey Ronaldi, who did art at university and then decided after getting his degree in art, he decided to do a complete turnaround and join the military. So he spent the next 20 years of his life in the military. And he spent time with the seconded British forces as a paratrooper and a commando in the Iraq War. And he did 2 tours also of East Bengal. He was discharged medically unfit, like many of us suffering from mental illness, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, which is the vast majority of those who go to war suffer from. And not only us, he was one of the first responders, police, fire and safety excellence, who quite a lot of them also suffer from PTSD from the trauma that they go through. And he decided he might go back to painting again. And that was 3 years ago. And since then, last year he was appointed, he did his own exhibition, he got appointed by the War Memorial at Hyde Park as the resident artist. And I went to an exhibition that he wrote, that he painted, and I was absolutely in awe of what I saw. It was amazing. He had critics there that are former Archibald Prize winners there who just was the same view as I was. The painting was absolutely amazing. And that inspired me. I thought, well, I think I might go back to writing. So today I'd like to read a poem that I wrote about Corey and the fact that he's trying to get over, the trauma of war. So, back into it. Your life was consumed in a world of war, the pain and suffering of what you saw. Out of this darkness, did the light shine through. That could only be determined by the likes of you. Get out of the world, get out of the void where darkness surrounds, walls closing in and voices out loud. This change in my life I must make, away from the war that I do hate. You envisage a new balance in your life, away from the turmoil and the strife. What can I do, you say, day after day? The skills that I have to bring into play. Remembering the time a brush in your hand, the power of painting as a young man. Should I start all over again, knowing the peace that it would bring? The decision is made, a positive start, slowly commenced from brush to art. The choice is made of what to paint. My experiences of war I can relate. The colours are there in black and white, the war being black and the dove being white. A painting of war and then of peace. Strength of brush, a great relief. The visions are bound, my painting alive. Hope now plentiful, I will survive. As the weeks and months produce the art, giving my life a brand new start. With darkness slowly moving away, the dove that I paint will always stay. With friends and family giving support, take me away from the war I fought. This gift that I was given to me as one, hopefully will last as it began. With paintings of many on display, enjoyed by all who make their way around the room where darkness be, the peace I feel and the light that I see. Forever now to enjoy my life, the brush, the art, and no more strife. The dove that I paint is not alone, awaiting the final journey home. And I said to him, you have flown through the darkness and into the light. The brush that you hold has won you the fight. Share the darkness and the light will shine through. I'd just like to say one final thing. It's great to be back home here. I call it home, it is my 3 children all went to school here. Bob Barham was the principal at the time. We spent a lot of time here in the school, and I'm proud to say that my daughter, I think, was 1992, was the duck to the school, I think I know. It's either 92 or 94. So thank you again for the invitation.
length will perform the bugle calls. You will remain standing for the remainder of the ceremony. First, you will hear the last pose. This has historically been played to signify the end of the day. It is now standard for commemorative services tribute to the fallen. When it is finished, we will have a 1-minute silence. The minute silence will be followed by the rouse, the bugle call sounded to the soldiers. Please stand and remain standing for the last pose, our minute silence, then the rouse, ending with the Australian national anthem. School for your attendance and respect during our ANZAC Day ceremony today. Please quietly remain standing at the exit of the official part.